Saturday, those of Love 101 FM.
Hello and welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. A special welcome to our listeners on love101.org. And if you're overseas and on the move, US listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you're in the UK, 0330-332-6541. Or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live. In the first watch today, reactions to the overturning of the Cosby conviction. In the second watch, to strike or not to strike, examining the occupational and ethical issues arising from industrial action. Our social media question we ask, what is your reaction to the overturning of the Cosby conviction? Please share your responses on our Facebook page, Love 101 FM, and also on WhatsApp, 876-997-3125, using the hashtag, The Morning Watch. We'll share your responses later on in the program, but before all of that, here's I quote.
This morning's I quote, never let the odds keep you from doing what you know in your heart you were meant to do. H. Jackson Brown. Good morning, Rev.
That's a good quote.
It is.
Good morning, Siobhan. Yeah, I'm seeing you now. I'm seeing you this morning.
There you go.
Huh? Yeah. Listen. What does so fly mean?
You're on top of the world. You're fresh. You're clean. Yeah, that's what it means.
I see. So why not just say I'm clean, I'm on top of the world? Why fly?
No, because fly, it gives a different feeling.
Different vibe.
Yes,
A
the
different
vibe is
vibe.
different.
It looks like it's a big tune, though. It's a big tune.
It's a big tune.
It's a big
You know, it's a big tune.
All right. The first watch will be back after this break.
It's your time.
Hey, we hit the road again this weekend in our I Love Summer Youth Fellowship Takeover. St. Elizabeth, it's your time. So join me, Siobhan Blair, this Friday, July 16, as we take over the Middle Portals New Testament Church of God. It's a youth fellowship you can't afford to miss. And if you are unable to swing by, you can watch us live on Facebook and on YouTube. It's our I Love Summer Youth Fellowship Takeover. Our I Love Summer Spotlight Youth Fellowship Takeover happens this and every Friday at 7 p.m. This St. Elizabeth leg is sponsored by Christian Charles. When you think loans, think Christian Charles. University of the Commonwealth Caribbean, fostering leadership and innovation. Shade purified drinking water. Drink up, stay cool. It's time to explore.
Here is a reminder from Love 101, the family station, as we face the COVID-19 pandemic. Masks are effective only when used in combination with frequent hand cleaning with soap and water or alcohol-based solutions. Wear a mask that is lined with 2 or more layers. When taking it off, ensure you dispose of it properly. I'm Nigel Wilkinson from Love 101, reminding you to protect yourself while protecting others. Stay safe and keep it locked on Love 101, the family station.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Now, on June 30, 2021, just about every news entity had a headline or headlining the fact that Bill Cosby's sexual assault conviction had been overturned. And immediately following, were the mixed reactions from shock to fury to relief. Indeed, American actor Amber Tamblyn posted on Twitter, "I'm furious to hear this news. I personally know women who this man drugged and raped while unconscious. Shame on the court and this decision." And while also we had a response from Felicia Rashad, who starred as Cosby's wife on The Cosby Show. She wrote on Instagram, "Finally, a terrible wrong is being right. A miscarriage of justice is corrected." So what are the legal explanations for the overturning of Cosby's conviction? And what are the reactions here in Jamaica? Are they also mixed? To answer these and other related questions, we have online so far Mr. Anthony Williams, attorney at law. Good morning, Mr. Williams.
My brother and friend, and to the members of the public as well. Good morning.
Yes, good to have you with us again, Mr. Williams.
Yes.
So kind of you to join us in this, our first watch. Now,
Yes.
Before we discuss the recent overturning of Bill Cosby's conviction in its fullness, what is your understanding, sir, of what and why he got convicted in the first place?
Well, there's no doubt that the Bill Cosby saga created a lot of drama and theatrics as well. Bill Cosby, as you know, is an international star and is seen as the father of America, someone who many Americans and and persons in the Commonwealth Caribbean, in fact, all over the world, looked up to. There's no doubt as well that there has been serious allegations against Mr. Cosby in relation to sexual charges. Now, he was charged and placed before the court, and there have been several allegations of sexual assault where victims allege that they were drugged, they were sexually assaulted, and that he took advantage of them. But as you know, he was convicted. His attorney appealed the conviction and sentence, and the Supreme Court overturned it. Now, a lot of persons perhaps do not understand what actually took place with the facts, as well as the Supreme Court's overturn of the conviction. I actually read the judgment.
Yes.
I actually read the judgment, and I was very, very intrigued as to the reasoning of the judgment. But for the benefit of our listeners, the then district attorney for the U.S. indicated, that is Mr. Kober, right? Castor. He indicated that based on his investigations and the investigations of his team, they found that the primary complainant, that is Ms. Constant, was not a credible witness. And they found that she was not a credible witness. Now, in fact, even after Mr. Cosby was charged and she made allegations, there were a plethora, numerous telephone calls between herself and Mr. Cosby. Numerous telephone calls. Now, if you are the victim of sexual assault and you have lodged a complaint against your assailant for sexual assault, why would you be calling that alleged accuser so many times? Yes. Also, it took her over 2 years for her to make the complaint. A thorough investigation was done, and the district attorney, Mr. Castor, came to the conclusion that there was not enough credible evidence and admissible evidence in court. So what they did, they entered into an agreement. What is interesting is that this agreement was entered into by Miss Costans, that is the complainant, as well as her lawyer. That is very interesting.
Yes.
So they were part of the agreement. And what was this agreement? The agreement is that Mr. Cosby would not be prosecuted. It was a written document. It was an agreement. And so that is a binding document. So it was easy for the Supreme Court to overturn that decision. Now, I'm going to read for you part of the judgment where Mr. Castor indicated that he was very surprised that his successor in title, that is Ms. Furman, the other district attorney, who opened the case. And this is what Mr. Castor said to her. He said, and I quote, "I am writing you just in case you might have forgotten what we did with Cosby back in 2005. Once we decided that the chances of prevailing in a criminal case were too remote to make an arrest, I concluded that the best way to achieve justice was to create an atmosphere where Constant, that is the complainant, would have the best chance of prevailing in a civil suit against Cosby. With the agreement of Attorney Phillips, that was Mr. Cosby's attorney, and Constant's lawyer, so it shows you that both the complainant's lawyer, Ms. Constant, and Mr. Cosby's lawyers were part of the agreement. I wrote the attached press release as the only comment I would make while the civil case was pending. Again, with the agreement of the defense lawyer and Constant's lawyer, I intentionally and specifically bound the Commonwealth that there would be no state prosecution of Cosby in order to remove from him the ability to claim his Fifth Amendment protection against self-incrimination. Finally, he says, thus forcing him to sit for a deposition under oath. He said, I believe at the time that they thought making him testify would solidify their civil case. But the only way to do that was for us, that is the Commonwealth, to promise not to prosecute him. So in effect, that is what I did. I never made an important decision without discussing it with you during your tenure as first assistant. So what we're seeing is the district attorney, Mr. Castor, reminding his successor in title that the prosecution would not prosecute Mr. Cosby. Therefore, from a legal
stick up in there. Yeah, stick up in there, Mr. Williams. Was this signed? Was this a signed document?
That's correct.
The avoidance of self-incrimination.
Yes, it was in fact a signed document. So when the Supreme Court overturned it, from a legal perspective, it could not be a surprise to Ms. Constant. It could also not be a surprise to her lawyers. And it certainly could not be a surprise to her family. Why do I say that? Because she and her lawyer were part and parcel of this agreement. What the district attorney was saying is that they found no credible evidence, no evidence that would have been admissible in court, and therefore they made the decision not to prosecute Mr. Cosby. What the court did in reversing the decision is that they are saying because there was an agreement not to prosecute Mr. Cosby, it was a breach, fundamental breach on the part of the prosecution for them to have pursued charges against him when there was this agreement.
Sorry, Mr. Williams, hold that thought. Hold that thought, please. We're going to take a break and be right back.
Yes. Okay.
Phoenix Health and Vision Center, 65 Main Street, St. Anne's Bay, near the St. Anne's Bay Health Center. The only full care eye service center in St. Anne.
The time by
Phoenix Health and Vision Center
is 7:15 on the family station, Love 101. Please do stay with us.
With their versatility and a timeless appeal, tiles can give color, texture, and a fabulous finishing touch to any space. And at Active Home Center, we have the best selection of tiles at affordable prices. Shop a wide selection of floor and wall tiles to add style and personality to your bathroom, kitchen, living room, and even your outdoors. Come in and let our experts show you how to make your designs come alive with the right tiles. Visit us at 84 Constant Spring Road. Active Home Center. More savings, more choices.
For the first time ever, the annual Holy Convocation of the Emmanuel Apostolic Church will take place in the USA, hosted by Bishop Ernest McDonald in Miramar, Florida. Hi, this is Presiding Bishop Everton Thomas, inviting you to join us Wednesday to Sunday, July 14 to 18, under the theme, Unshakable, Standing Strong When Things Go Wrong. Visit emmanuelhq.org for live stream information. That's EMMANUELHQ.org. Stay blessed.
When all is done and said, love me shorty bread. You love me shorty what? You love me shorty bread. And it was made by honey bun. You love me shorty bread.
I know, man. She gets out of bed even when she doesn't feel like it. She works long hours and rarely gets a break. She gives of herself every single day and has a very important job.
Here you go, sweetie. Do you need anything else?
But this woman is not only a nurse, she is also my mom. And Malta helps her care for herself so she can look after everybody else. And me too. Thanks, Mommy. Thanks, Malta.
Malta is full of life.
Slow internet, nah keep again. Switch and get 1 month free on Jamaica's fastest network. Speed on over to Digicel and try our 30-day Prime bundle free for 1 month. Loaded with data, local calls, and text. Wait, it gets better. Plus, get enough more data to enjoy more of the movies, music, and sports you want with your Digicel lifestyle apps. If you're on the go, you can't afford to be slow. Switch to Jamaica's fastest network and keep your number. Visit the store today or message us at Digicel Jamaica on socials for more details. Digicel, better together.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint, and in this, the first watch, we are discussing reactions to the overturning of the Cosby conviction. And we have online Mr. Anthony Williams, attorney at law, who has been ably carrying us through the case from the earlier days to the present in terms of the conviction. Mr. Williams, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here, yes. Right.
Okay, great. So before the break, you're explaining to us, what was the basis on which the case was overturned. Please continue, Mr. Williams. And before you do, I would like the listeners to know that we also had plans to have the president of Women Inc. joining us. We're having some difficulty connecting with her. Mr. Williams.
Yes. So basically, what the district attorney did was to allow the complainant, that is Ms. Constant, to have her civil rights not being abrogated or trampled on. So there was a press release. There was a press release where the district attorney, Mr. Castor, signed. In fact, it was the plaintiff's attorney, that is Ms. Constant. And when we refer to the plaintiff, we are referring to the victim. So it was the victim, Ms. Constant. In this case, her attorney requested that there be something in writing. And so it was in fact in writing. Now, the whole aim of this was to ensure that it would allow Ms. Constant to go to the civil court and file civil proceedings against Mr. Cosby. But the prosecution was of the opinion, based on the facts, that Ms. Constant would have been an incredible witness. There was no admissible evidence, and they found essentially that the case was weak. not just weak, but very weak. So here was the rhetorical question. When the matter was overturned, could it be said that the public should be surprised, bearing in mind the weakness of the evidence from a legal perspective? As far as I'm concerned, I would not be surprised, and I am not surprised. From a woman's perspective, from a societal perspective, of course, they would be surprised. Why would they be surprised? They would be surprised because Mr. Cosby certainly admitted that he invited Miss Constance to his home and at other places to have dinner, lunch, and there were elements of sexual assaults and touches, and there were elements where he drugged them. But the other aspect of it is the credibility of Miss Constance. They just did not, believe her overall story. Now, in a criminal case, you have to prove, that is the prosecution, that there is evidence. You must prove the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. And Miss Constance's whole evidence was fairly shady. So as far as I'm concerned, from a legal perspective, it was very easy for the Supreme Court to have overturned that decision, because there was an agreement, a binding agreement, for Mr. Cosby not to be charged or prosecuted. More an agreement not to be prosecuted. And so in America, there is a term called the Fifth Amendment, where they didn't want him to plead the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination. So once he gave evidence at the civil trial, right, he could not rely on the Fifth Amendment, where he says, well, I don't want to incriminate myself.
I'm wondering, you see, Mr. But yeah, go ahead, Mr. William, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I'm just wondering, wouldn't all of that, those issues, evidence, etc., come out in the trial earlier? I mean, 2-3 years ago. Why weren't those things raised as major issues then?
What issues?
Well, the whole matter of her credibility and the self-incrimination aspect of it.
Well,
were those things raised as major issues?
Well, you see, the whole thing is that there were credibility issues, and Bill Cosby's lawyers also attacked the witness on a credibility issue basis. But of course, you will have to understand that this case is not just only about Bill Cosby. It was a case about the media playing a very important role. And you being in the media, you know the media is very, very powerful. The media is an awesome institution. Media views can swing a case negatively. It can swing a case positively. Yeah. It can influence persons. Remember that the jurors are not robots. They're not robots at all. They are human beings. They have feelings. They have children who may be daughters. They have family members, right, who may be females. And so these play an important role, right? Now, there's no doubt that Mr. Cosby, from a societal point of view, would have let down his fans, would have let down his media community, because he's a media personnel. He's an icon in theater. But, the law involves principles of law. It involves concepts. It involves legal principles. And so once
I'm happy you mentioned that, Mr. William, because many persons are saying it's really a technicality why he is now free. But it doesn't absolve him of the fact that he committed some grievous acts.
And that is quite correct. That is quite correct. The conduct of Mr. Cosby certainly ought not to be condoned, and that is the message that we would like to convey, and I believe Mr. Cosby fully knows that his conduct ought not to be condoned by anyone. You know, no woman or no female should be subjected to that type of assault. Because remember, not only were they or Miss Constant sexually assaulted, but they were drugged, right? They were drugged. And so that is another way of stimifying their consent, right? And that is certainly not appropriate. But the law is the law.
Right.
The law is the law. And once you are in the legal arena, some will say, well, you know, it is a technicality. Well, technical in the sense that there are legal requirements and you have to fulfill the legal requirements. There was a binding agreement that Mr. Cosby should not be charged. There was a binding agreement that Mr. Cosby should not be prosecuted. There was a common understanding between Ms. Constant's lawyer as well as Mr. Cosby's lawyers that they should not be prosecuted. There's a principle in law called estoppel. E-S-T-O-P-P-E-L, estoppel. And what estoppel means is that when you make a representation of fact, so you said something and you then turn around and go against what you said, then that is a breach. So there was in fact a representation of fact by the prosecutor that they will not prosecute Mr. Cosby. And then they turn around and prosecute him. The court says, no, we're not going to allow this type of behavior to manifest itself in the court, because the court also has to send a message to the wider society that there are legal principles, there are legal concepts, and there are rules. And you can't...
I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy that you're going there, because what are the lessons for us in Jamaica today that we can learn from this whole scenario?
All right, there are several lessons to learn, and there are several lessons to learn. One, we have to look at the prosecution. So when a policeman or woman or a team of police go to investigate, they must make sure that they investigate properly. They must also they must investigate properly. They must also ensure that they get good, credible witnesses. And if a witness is just not credible, it doesn't make sense you put up the case, right? Another thing is that Miss Constant, she reported the incident some 2 years
after.
Years after, right? Now there is an opposite side to that, in that you can understand some women, they have been wronged, they have been assaulted, and they have what is called pride. Every woman has pride. Men have pride too. And so it may not be a situation where she thought that she had the audacity or being audacious to go and report it. Remember now, Bill Cosby is an icon. You know, how dare you go and make a report? Who's going to believe you? Those are some of the things that I would imagine would be in the mind of a victim. They go to the police station and they say, hey, you know, I was sexually assaulted or raped or molested by Bill Cosby. They're going to say, who? Are you serious? The first thing they're going to do is think about running you out to the police station. So they have to think about being brave enough to make that. So again, another lesson to learn is that icons, celebrities, will have to recognize that they are not above the law. And that is what this case also proved, that irrespective of your position in life, whether you are a celebrity, an icon, you're going to be prosecuted if you breach the law. That is one lesson. Another thing is that it also teaches our women that they must stand up against sexual assault. You would have recognized that several women came after Miss Constant and said, yes, I too was assaulted. The information I have been reading is that about 50 women made allegations of sexual assault. No,
sorry, Mr. Williams, we have to leave it there. We are totally out of time.
Yeah, but I must say that 2 women is too much. One is even too much, and 50 is an atrocious figure.
Unfortunate. Thank you so very much, Mr. Williams, for coming on the program and giving us all this information and insight. Have a productive day, sir.
Thank you very much, my brother. Good.
Great. Listeners, the Morning Watch will return in just a moment.
Out and make a statement in your brand new vehicle.
The time by JN will help you find a way is 7:31.
When all is done and said, me love me shawty bread. You love me shawty what? Me love me shawty bread. And it was made by honey bun. Me love me shawty bread.
The first sound they make is to simply let the world know they're here. And then it's our duty to help them show the world why they're here in the first place.
Give them every advantage with the Guardian Achiever, a plan that provides for their educational dreams and protects their health and life in the process. For more information, call 888-4LIFE to speak to an advisor or visit myguardiangroup.com.
Slow internet, nah keep again. Switch and get 1 month free on Jamaica's fastest network. Speed on over to Digicel and try our 30-day Prime bundle free for 1 month. Loaded with data, local calls, and text. Wait, it gets better. Plus, get enough more data to enjoy more of the movies, music, and sports you want with your Digicel lifestyle apps. If you're on the go, you can't afford to be slow. Switch to Jamaica's fastest network and keep your number. Visit the store today or message us at Digicel Jamaica on socials for more details. Digicel, better together.
Here is a reminder from Love 101, the family station, as we face the COVID-19 pandemic. Be kind to address stigma during this pandemic. Share the latest facts and avoid exaggerating stories. Show solidarity with affected persons and tell the stories of persons who have experienced the virus. I am Kimberly Levy from Love 101, reminding you to protect yourself while protecting others. Stay safe and keep it locked on Love 101, the family station.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's look at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. In the Observer, government pushing for developers to build water tanks in new housing schemes. And also, power vacuum rattles Haiti in wake of president's killing. We also see 1 Cuban dead, dozens arrested after unprecedented protests. In the Gleaner, affection or assault, butt slaps touching new frontier of debate as harassment bill is passed. And then Portland East, residents clamor for caretakers to be named. Then finally we see in the Gleaner, jailing of uncontrollable kids to end. Those are some of the major headlines in our newspapers. Well, coming up next, we'll read some of the feedback from our social media question. What is your reaction to the overturning of the Cosby conviction? Please leave a comment on our Facebook page, Love 101 FM Jamaica, or WhatsApp 876-997-3125. Soon come back.
It's your time.
Hey, we hit the road again this weekend in our I Love Summer Youth Fellowship Takeover. St. Elizabeth, it's your time. So join me, Shavadi Blair, this Friday, July 16, as we take over the Middle Portals New Testament Church of God. It's a youth fellowship you can't afford to miss. And if you aren't able to swing by, you can watch us live on Facebook and on YouTube. It's our I Love Summer Youth Fellowship Takeover. Our I Love Summer Spotlight Youth Fellowship Takeover happens this and every Friday at 7 p.m. This St. Elizabeth leg is sponsored by Christian Charles. When you think loans, think Christian Charles. University of the Commonwealth Caribbean, fostering leadership and innovation. Shade purified drinking water. Drink up, stay cool. It's time to explore.
Welcome back. You're tuned in to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's join Shavoni for a look at how our Facebook and WhatsApp friends answered today's question. What is your reaction to the overturning of the Cosby conviction? Shavoni, anything?
All right, Sylvia, as you're seeing, says, I totally agree with the turning over of this conviction. You can't wait so long to speak out. Foolishness, free the man. All right. Let me see. Now, this one on WhatsApp says, I supported it. There are many who are standing by to pull down others for spite. She says, half truth is not truth. All right. That's all I'm seeing now. Keep the convo going, folks.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Shavoni. Thanks to those who took the time to give us the feedback. Half truth is not the truth. Well, I'll now segue into our second watch. It was reported recently that for various reasons, some public sector doctors were on sick out. Involvement in a strike is usually a last resort for many groups of persons. But is such involvement right or wrong? Or does it depend on the type of strike, as well as the reason or reasons for the strike? Well, to discuss the occupational and ethical issues arising from such industrial action, we have joining us Mrs. Helen Davis White, President of the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, and the Reverend Canon Garth Minot, lecturer at the United Theological College of the West Indies. Good morning to you both.
Good morning. Morning, sir. Morning to your listeners.
Thank you. Good morning, Mrs. Helen Davis White. She with us? Okay. Seems as if we have only Reverend Minot so far with us. All right. Okay. Yes, I'm seeing you now, Reverend Minot. How are you?
Okay. I'm well. I'm well, thanks.
Okay,
good to see you.
Great.
I'm
yes,
well.
man. Great.
Thank you.
Yes, great. Well, before we delve into our discussion, Reverend Minot, in a fulsome way, the occupational issues in regards to strike, before we do all of that in depth, could you share with us what were your initial thoughts and concerns when you heard about last week's sick out of public sector doctors?
Well, it's personal and pastoral in that I have members of my congregation that are doctors serving, so it was personal and pastoral, and so it was anxious times because some of them had received their contracts while others were, awaiting contracts. Some were terminated. So it was a turbulent time, and if it was turbulent for me as pastor, I can well imagine what it was for them as doctors. They're medical doctors. Some of them have families. Some of them have parents, grandparents that they're responsible for. They have loans to pay, etc. So it was stressful and difficult. So it wasn't just a matter of a strike. And we know from the principles of the International Labour Organization that a strike, in this case it's a sick out, is a last resort. It comes at the end of a very long process. So it's not for one of trying to some kind of conciliation over time. That was tried and it didn't work. So I understand why they had to end up there, but it was not easy.
The fact, though, Reverend Minor, that it was a sick out, persons calling in sick, and they are not really sick, I'm assuming. What's your take on that? What are your concerns in that regard?
The ILO frames this matter of freedom of association. And I was drawn to that as a principle because it approximates to how we understand ourselves as church. Freedom of association, we call ourselves the body of Christ. And St. Paul in 1 Corinthians 12 points out that if one member of the body is affected, all other members are affected.
Yes.
Which means if one member of the body is sick, like your finger, all other members of the body is sick. And I do a lot of work in HIV, and Moussa Dubé, for example, Professor Moussa Dubé has a way of saying that the fact that one member of the church has HIV, then the entire body of Christ has HIV. So theologically, sickness is not the way you probably think of sickness, that it is, you have to go to the hospital, get examination by a doctor, get an injection, a prescription, etc. That's one understanding of sickness. But if you think of sickness theologically and biblically in the way St. Paul describes it, then of course they are calling in sick because all is not well in the association. And I talk about the ILO principle of freedom of association.
They should be doing this more often then, because they're always sick. We are having sick doctors ministering to us.
But remember, sickness is not choose. Sickness happens to you, and it happens to us. And I go back to the ILO principle, because the ILO principle says, as I mentioned earlier, a strike is a last resort. In other words, the parties are to work for conciliation. And that is why I said these actions are the last resort. They come at the end of a process. So you imagine a group of people sitting around a table trying to negotiate around a particular issue. And they spend long hours trying to determine what is the best way forward for this. So I don't want us, and I don't want your listeners to think that a sick out, they just got up one morning and say, oh, we're going to call in sick today. That's how it may come across on the media. But behind the scenes and long before that action, there were and are a number of steps and conversations and back and forth negotiations that are taking place. And for those of us in church, we are a voluntary organization. We can't force anybody to do anything. We understand the nature of negotiation and conciliation. Right. It's a give and take. It is surrendering your position for the greater good, etc. You have all of that going forth. So when a person calls in sick, it's the end of a long, painstaking process that, in terms of the ILO principle, is not going anywhere, and therefore is one of the tools in a bag of tools that the ILO says is available to those who are negotiating for better working conditions, in this case for doctors.
Yes. Well, we are soon to go to break, but let me just do a spot check. I'm trying to find out if Mrs. Davis White is on.
Sure.
Mrs. Davis White, are you with us?
Yes, I'm on now.
Okay, good to have you with us. This is Davis White. We're about to go to break. So let me just take the break now, and then we'll be right back.
When all is done and said, me love me shawty bread. You love your shawty what? You love me shawty bread. And it was made by honey bun. You love me shawty bread.
I always do my best to stay in control of my expenses. So with Flow, I added my mobile to my home internet service and elevated my savings. I get 50% off my mobile plan each month. Yeah, man, I get a simple, predictable mobile bill of $1,600 plus GCT and never sign a contract nor made a deposit. And you can get this too. Add your mobile to your Flow home internet for elevated savings of 50% off your mobile plan each month. Visit the Flow store or discoverflow.co to sign up today.
Time of love is 7:45.
The Students Loan Bureau turns 50 and it's a golden celebration. Over the years, we've transformed dreams, accelerated change, and contributed to our nation's development.
With SLB, I was able to finance my future, and now my daughter can chase her own dreams.
The Students Loan Bureau has been part of so many success stories, and we are proud to spend the next 50 years promoting equal access to brighter futures. Thank you, Jamaica, for entrusting us with your dreams and for 50 stellar years.
Hello, today we're going to be making breakfast and preparing a lunchbox for school. Let's start with some sugar and salt and wash it down with a nice big glass of more sugar. And now for the lunchbox. Let's put in saturated fat, more salt, and sugar. Foods high in salt, fats, and sugar increase the risk of hypertension, obesity, heart disease, and type 2 diabetes. Now more than ever, we have the right to know what's in our food. Give us warning labels on the front of our food packages.
A message from the Heart Foundation of Jamaica, Ministry of Health and Wellness, and partners.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us in this the second half of the second watch. We are looking at the whole matter of strikes, to strike or not to strike. We're examining the occupational and ethical issues arising from industrial action. And we have online the Reverend Canon Garth Minot from UTC, WI, and we have Mrs. Helene Davis White, President of Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions. Mrs. Davis White, could you tell us, please, in regards to strikes generally, how do they relate to the law? What are the concerns there? What does the law of the land state in regards to strikes?
Well, the first thing is that the main law that speaks to strike would be the Labor Relations and Industrial Disputes Act.
Yes.
And what it sets out is not only in relation to strike, but what it defines is industrial action, which is any action that is in contemplation of a dispute and that may have the effect of either stopping the work, slowing down the work, etc., etc. So industrial action is, in fact, what is recognized in the Labor Relations and Industrial Disputes Act, of which strike is one of the actions that would fall under that definition. We have other forms of industrial action. Recognizing that the International Labour Organization, and I think I heard Reb speaking to some of it, discusses and looks at the whole issue of the right to strike, and it is part of the Freedom of Association Convention of the International Labour Organization, the fact that workers should have the right to withdraw their labor if they have gone through a process of trying to settle a dispute and it does not seem to be going anywhere. So that's the first important thing that we have to recognize. And in Jamaica, the Labor Relations Act sets out what is called, defines what is called lawful industrial action. And that industrial action is one that would have had to be reported and efforts being made to resolve it by the Minister of Labour may have failed, then workers would then be allowed to take industrial action, allowed in the sense of the word lawful industrial action.
Stick up in there, Mrs. Davis White. What about the doctors then, the public sector doctors? When they go on a sick out, is that lawful or unlawful industrial action?
Well, as I said, because the law speaks to industrial action, and it is anything that may have the effect of either stopping the work or slowing down the work, etc., then it means that what the term that would be used to define what the doctors or other, because in the past week we have had similar action by our public health inspectors, and I think over the last couple of days, persons employed at the Water Resources Authority, what they are in fact involved in is what is called a sick out. But it is in fact a form of industrial action under the definition of industrial action. So what it would mean is that workers would agree to report sick, and by doing that, all the workers coming together, it would have the effect of, it would affect the ability to carry out the services as a result of the workers reporting sick.
Reverend Minot, what are the ethical factors? What are the ethical factors which should be considered when determining whether to go on a strike or not?
Well, I said it in part previously with respect to the ILO principle of freedom of association. I think it's useful to start there, that when we have disputes of any kind, the idea is not to solve the dispute by entering into other disputes. The idea is to solve the disputes by drawing on principles and of course, legislation. So the parties, first and foremost, has a duty to drawing on the principles of the ILO, the legislation which Ms. Davis-White referred to earlier, and from my vantage point, the social justice, that workers have rights just as employers have rights. And therefore, in a dispute, what you have is a clash of rights. And to resolve that, each party needs to recognize its duty to fulfill and uphold the ILO principles as well as the legislation. But also each party has responsibility as an ethical principle. So that the responsibility, as I mentioned earlier from a biblical theological point, if we understand ourselves as a body politic, that really in the final analysis we are Jamaicans. And our job or responsibility is to work for the common good. So the responsibility that lies with all parties in a dispute is to ensure that you keep the common good before you. And in this particular case with the doctors, it is about health and wellness. It's the health and wellness of themselves as professionals. It's health and wellness of their freedom of association within their association, and it is freedom of association within the national landscape. So they have a responsibility to keep Jamaica well. And therefore it does not, no party can so aggravate a dispute that in the end it undermines national growth and development. So the ethical principle really is that each party has a duty and a responsibility to ensure that the health and wellness of the society is maintained at all costs. And so disputes, resolving disputes are all part of that. And so the sick out that was called, in my view, although I like the way the ILO frames it in terms of essential service. So those in the essential service are not allowed to strike, but even strike itself is qualified in many ways so as to give the worker bargaining rights, bargaining power, so that the employer doesn't feel it can exploit the worker because they are essential workers, for example. The end, there's a right and responsibility for everyone.
Right. Mrs. Davis-White, we talk about last resort. Give us an idea of the continuum. How would you decide that this ought to be a last resort in terms of the stages of strikes? So, what's the thinking?
The truth is, that's going to vary according to the particular situation. But generally speaking, one speaks of strike as a last resort in the context of the fact that the strike is not generally meant to hurt the persons who are receiving the services of the workers. It's not meant to hurt the organization. But at the end of the day, having gone through a process of negotiation, collective bargaining, and there is intransigence in terms of trying to meet the workers' needs and desires, then at that point, workers would generally take a decision to involve themselves in industrial action. If we look at the situation with the doctors recently, you would have heard that they have had ongoing discussions. Some of these issues date back years in terms of non-payment of monies owed to them. So I don't think anyone could say that they took a decision to strike, in a willy-nilly kind of fashion. They have been involved in the discussions. They have had it at varying levels, because you would start the discussion at the local level with your immediate employer. You're not getting anywhere with that. You would seek intervention of your parent ministry or the Ministry of Labor, and you may not be achieving the desired end, and so the workers at that point may decide that they really need to register their displeasure with the way the negotiations are proceeding, and in that context involve themselves in some kind of industrial action.
What do you say, Mrs. Davis White, to those patients last week who, when they turned up hospitals and all of that, they were not attended to as they normally would be? Persons who became worse health-wise because of the strike. Persons who were inconvenienced in more ways than one. What we say to those people?
And that's a difficult situation, and I think most times when strike actions have to be taken, the particular trade union or association that represents the workers usually express regrets that it had to come to strike action, but indicating that that was what had to be done, bearing in mind the particular circumstances. One of the things also that I think we need to recognize is that the process usually involves workers indicating through what is called an ultimatum that if the issues are not resolved by a particular time, then the association or union would not be held responsible for what action the workers may take to ensure that their dispute is resolved. And so employers at that particular point would have an indication that something is pending, and so they can make their preparations, because workers rarely go on strike without giving an ultimatum to the employer. In some industries, a strike notice is required, where you have to give, I think in the Jamaican situation, it may be 3 days strike notice. And that's usually in industries where if the workers take action immediately without going through a process,
that's not for sick out. That's not for sick out.
That you have to have a shutdown of your equipment in an orderly fashion, and if the workers just get up and walk off, you can have the equipment being damaged. Workers don't want that, because the workers want to go back to work after the strike has ended. So we would have agreed to the introduction of the notion of a strike notice being put in place.
Tell you what, we are totally out of time. We want to thank you both for joining us, Mrs. Helene Davis White and Reverend Garth Minot. Have a productive and blessed day.
Thank you.
Thank you, listeners, for being with us. Join us again tomorrow as we continue to set the stage for a discussion of topical and the controversial issues. For information on how to get copies of this program, call our production department at 876-968-9596-7. You can listen to the Morning Watch on our Love 101 app and watch it on the Love 101 FM Facebook page and YouTube channel. This has been the Morning Watch. Thanks to our producer, Ms. Kathy Gale, and our guests. I'm Dylan Toussaint. Hand you back to Love in the Morning with Siobhan Blair.
To you by Honey Bun. Big thanks to Honey Bun. It's approaching 8:01.